The grand hall of the Imperial Academy stretched so high that clouds formed near its ceiling. Marcus Chen stood in the corner, trying to make himself invisible. He adjusted his glasses with nervous fingers and flipped open his leather journal. Around him, the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered for an event that happened only once every 100 years. Marcus was not supposed to be here. Well, he was supposed to be here, but not like this. He was a researcher from Earth, sent to document the succession trial for the human colonial archives. Nothing more. Just the observer with a pen and paper, watching history unfold. The candidates were impossible to ignore. Prince Vor Ash of the Kryn Empire stood near the center of the hall, all 7 feet of him. His 4 arms were crossed over, his massive chest, each one thick with muscle that could crush steel. His skin had a purple tint that marked him as royal blood. Warriors bowed when he passed. Marcus had read that Vorash had conquered 12 planets before his 20th birthday. Now he was 25, and considered the favorite to win. Lady Celestine of the Silver Court was the opposite of Vorash in every way except power. She was tall and thin, with silver hair that floated around her head like she was underwater. Her people had spent thousands of years perfecting their genetics. Celestine was the result of 300 generations of careful breeding. She was designed to be perfect. Her mind could calculate complex mathematics in seconds. Her body never got sick, never got tired. She moved like liquid light. Marcus tried not to stare at her, but it was difficult. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Commander Zek stood alone near one of the massive windows. Half of his body was machine now. His left eye glowed red, constantly scanning the room. His right arm had been replaced with advanced cybernetics that could lift a transport vehicle. Zek had led the coalition forces in the border wars and never lost a battle. His strategy programs were studied in every military academy across the galaxy. People whispered that his brain was more computer than organic matter now. There were 12 other candidates, each one representing a different royal bloodline. The crystalline duchess from Prism Prime who could split light into weapons. The twin emperors of Geminus who shared one consciousness across 2 bodies. The shadow prince whose people could move through darkness itself. Every single one of them had been trained since birth for this moment. Marcus wrote in his journal, his handwriting messy and fast. He described the candidates, their bearing, their confidence. He noted the way servants practically flew to fulfill their smallest request. He observed how none of them spoke to each other. They were competitors, not friends. A bell rang, deep and resonant. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere. Conversations stopped immediately. Even Prince Vorash stood straighter. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in an instant. She appeared in the center of the hall, the Dragon Lady. Marcus had seen pictures, but they had not prepared him for the reality. She was not solid, not exactly. She was a hologram, but unlike any hologram Marcus had ever seen. Her form shifted constantly. One moment she looked like a beautiful woman in elegant robes. The next moment scales rippled across her skin. Then she was more dragon than woman, with wings that stretched across the hall and eyes that burned like stars. She was not a person. She was an artificial intelligence, built 5,000 years ago by the First Empire. She had watched empires rise and fall. She had chosen every ruler of the galactic throne since the beginning. Her decisions were absolute. Her wisdom was considered beyond question. Marcus felt his heart hammering in his chest. Even from across the room, even knowing she was just advanced technology, the Dragon Lady terrified him on a primal level. "Welcome," her voice echoed through the hall. It sounded like 1,000 voices speaking in perfect harmony. The succession trial begins now. The candidates moved forward as one, arranging themselves in a semicircle before her. Marcus noticed that even they looked nervous. Good. He felt slightly better knowing that warriors and perfect beings also felt fear. "The galactic throne stands empty," the Dragon Lady continued. Her form flickered, showing glimpses of terrible dragon features. "The old emperor's power fades. A new ruler must be chosen. You have each come believing you are worthy." Prince Vorash nodded confidently. Lady Celestine smiled her perfect smile. Commander Zek's red eye glowed brighter. In previous trials, I have tested candidates across many challenges, the Dragon Lady said. Her eyes, currently burning gold, swept across the assembled candidates. Physical strength, mental capability, strategic thinking, moral fiber, diplomatic skill. Each trial has taken weeks, sometimes months. Marcus wrote quickly, documenting every word. This was important. The structure of the trials influenced galactic politics for the next century. This time will be different, the Dragon Lady announced, and her voice carried a weight that made the air feel heavier. You will face one test, only one, but it will reveal everything I need to know. Murmurs rippled through the crowd of observers. One test? That was unprecedented. Families had spent fortunes preparing their candidates for the traditional trials. Now all that preparation might be worthless. The test has already begun, the Dragon Lady said, and Marcus could swear she smiled, showing too many teeth. It began the moment you entered this academy 3 weeks ago. Every moment since then has been part of my evaluation. Marcus stopped writing. 3 weeks ago? He had been here for 3 weeks, observing the candidates as they trained and prepared. Did that mean? No, surely not. He was not a candidate, he was just a researcher. The Dragon Lady's form solidified into something more human, though her eyes remained distinctly reptilian. Tomorrow, you will demonstrate your power. You will show me the strength that makes you believe you deserve to rule. Prepare yourselves. Some of you will not survive the attempt. With that, she vanished. The temperature returned to normal. The candidates began speaking all at once, their voices mixing into chaos. Advisors rushed forward. Royal families huddled together, already strategizing. Marcus closed his journal and slipped toward the exit. He needed to find a good vantage point for tomorrow's demonstration. Maybe the upper gallery would work. He would need extra recording crystals too. If candidates were going to channel the Academy's power core, the energy readings would be incredible. As he walked through the corridors back to his tiny quarters, Marcus thought about the Dragon Lady's words. Every moment for 3 weeks had been a test. He wondered what she had been looking for. Power, obviously. Wisdom, certainly. But what else? He passed a window and stopped to look out at the city below. Nova Prime sparkled in the evening light. Millions of beings from thousands of species living together. Somewhere down there, ordinary people were finishing their work, eating dinner with their families, living their lives. They would not care who won the succession trial, as long as the new ruler was fair and just. Marcus made a note in his journal about that thought. The perspective of ordinary citizens was often missing from historical records. Everyone always focused on the powerful, the exceptional, the special. But what about everyone else? He reached his quarters and settled in for the night, reviewing his notes. Tomorrow would be interesting. Tomorrow, the real trial would begin. Marcus had no idea how right he was, and he definitely had no idea that the Dragon Lady had been watching him most carefully of all. The demonstration chamber was built for destruction. Marcus stood in the upper gallery, pressed against the reinforced glass with his journal open and 3 recording crystals floating beside him. Below, the massive circular floor was marked with ancient symbols that glowed faintly. In the center stood a pillar of pure energy, reaching from floor to ceiling. This was the Academy's power core, or rather, a controlled tendril of it. The actual core could power an entire solar system. The gallery was packed with dignitaries from across the galaxy. Holographic cameras broadcasted the event to trillions of viewers. This was entertainment for most of them. For Marcus, it was research. He sketched the energy patterns in his journal, noting the way the symbols pulsed in sequence. The Dragon Lady materialized beside the pillar. Today, her form leaned more toward dragon than human. Scales covered her arms. Her eyes burned with inner fire. Wings, translucent and shimmering, spread behind her. The test of power begins, she announced. Her voice carried easily despite the noise of the crowd. Each candidate will channel the core. You must draw power through your body and direct it outward. The strength you display, the control you maintain, the duration you endure, all will be measured, Marcus wrote quickly. This was a brutal test. Channeling that much energy could kill someone. He had read historical accounts of candidates who had been burned from the inside out by attempting this. Prince Vorash, the Dragon Lady called. "You are first." The Kryn Prince descended to the floor with heavy steps. His forearms stretched wide. The crowd fell silent. Even from the gallery, Marcus could see Vorash's muscles tensing, preparing for the ordeal. Vorash placed two of his hands on the pillar. Energy exploded outward immediately. The prince roared, a sound that shook the chamber. Lightning arced from his other two hands, scorching the floor. The symbols around him blazed bright enough to hurt Marcus's eyes. Power radiated from Vorash in waves. The protective barriers around the gallery flickered as they absorbed the overflow. Marcus shielded his eyes but kept watching. Vorash was channeling enough energy to power a small city. The prince's body glowed from within, his purple skin turning almost white with the heat. 15 seconds, 20, 30, the air itself seemed to burn. At 40 seconds, Vorash released the pillar and staggered back. Smoke rose from his hands. His breathing came in gasps. But he was alive, standing, and he had just set a new record for raw power channeling. The crowd erupted in cheers. Vorash's family delegation waved banners. The prince himself managed a tired smile. Marcus made notes. Subject endured 40 seconds. Impressive physical tolerance. Brute force approach. No finesse, but effective. Lady Celestine, the Dragon Lady called. The silver-haired woman glided down to the floor. Where Vorash had been all aggression, Celestine was grace. She touched the pillar with just her fingertips. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the energy began to flow, but differently. Instead of explosive bursts, Celestine created patterns. The energy wove around her like ribbons of light. She shaped it, controlled it, made it dance. The power core's output was no less than what Vorash had channeled, but Celestine made it look effortless. Her genetically perfect body processed the energy with optimal efficiency. No waste, no strain. Marcus leaned forward, fascinated. This was not just power. This was artistry. Celestine held the connection for 1 minute. Then 2, then 3. Her expression never changed. She could have been arranging flowers for all the effort it seemed to take. At 5 minutes, the Dragon Lady spoke. Sufficient. Celestine released the pillar and stepped back, not even breathing hard. Her hair still floated around her head, undisturbed. The crowd's applause was more respectful than enthusiastic. What Celestine had done was so perfect it almost seemed inhuman, which Marcus supposed was the point he wrote in his journal. Genetic optimization allows for sustained channeling, maximum efficiency, but something feels cold about it. Perfect but cold. One by one, the other candidates took their turns. The crystalline duchess shattered into 1,000 pieces and channeled power through each shard simultaneously. The twin emperors connected together and created a feedback loop that amplified their output. The Shadow Prince pulled energy through dimensions that Marcus did not understand. Each demonstration was spectacular. Each candidate pushed themselves to their absolute limit. The crowd cheered for their favorites. Bets were placed and paid out. It was the greatest display of power the galaxy had seen in a century. Commander Zek was last. The cyborg warrior approached the pillar with mechanical precision. He did not touch it with his hands. Instead, ports opened in his arms and chest. Cables extended and connected directly to the energy stream. What happened next made Marcus drop his pen. Zek did not just channel the power. He hacked it. His cybernetic systems interfaced with the core's control mechanisms. Energy flowed through him and back into the Academy's systems, creating loops and patterns that should not have been possible. Zek was not just enduring the power. He was controlling the source itself. Alarms began to sound. Safety systems activated. The Dragon Lady's form flickered with what might have been surprise. Zek held the connection for 7 minutes, his systems operating beyond their design specifications. His human eye bled from the strain, but his machine eye burned brighter. When he finally disconnected, sparks flew from his ports. His flesh was burned where it met metal, but he had done something no one else had. He had turned the test into a demonstration of dominance over the technology itself. The crowd was stunned into silence. Then chaos. Half the observers erupted in applause. The other half shouted protests that Zek had cheated by altering the test itself. Marcus retrieved his pen with shaking hands. His journal entry was simple. He changed the rules. Is that innovation or arrogance? All 15 candidates had completed their demonstrations. Each had been incredible in their own way. Raw power, perfect control, creative application, strategic manipulation, Marcus had never seen anything like it. These were the finest specimens the galaxy could produce. The dragon lady stood silent for a long moment. Her form shifted and changed, scales appearing and disappearing, wings folding and unfolding. Every eye in the chamber fixed on her, waiting for judgment. When she spoke, her voice was cold. Insufficient. The single word hit the room like a physical blow. Insufficient? How could any of those performances be insufficient? They had been legendary. They would be talked about for generations. But my lady, one of the judges dared to speak up. These are the highest power outputs ever recorded. Lady Celestine's control was mathematically perfect. Commander Zek achieved the impossible. Insufficient, the dragon lady repeated, and this time her voice made the walls shake. You asked me what I saw. I saw exactly what I expected. Power, control, innovation, dominance. You showed me what you can do to the galaxy. She turned slowly, her massive form making the chamber feel small. Not one of you asked what you should do for the galaxy. Marcus stopped writing. He felt something shift in his chest, a realization that the test was not what everyone thought it was. The dragon lady's eyes swept across the candidates below, and Marcus could have sworn he saw disappointment in those ancient, terrible eyes. The test continues, she announced. Tomorrow you will face questions of wisdom and judgment. Prepare yourselves. She vanished, leaving silence behind. The candidates looked at each other, confused. Their advisors rushed forward, already analyzing what had gone wrong. The crowd dispersed, buzzing with speculation. Marcus stayed in the gallery, watching the empty chamber below. He thought about the dragon lady's words. What you can do versus what you should do. It was a simple distinction, but profound. He made a note in his journal. Power without purpose is just destruction in slow motion. Below, technicians moved in to repair the damage from the demonstrations. The symbols on the floor had been scorched. The pillar flickered uncertainly. It would take them hours to reset everything for tomorrow. Marcus gathered his things and headed back to his quarters. His mind was racing. Something about this trial felt different from the historical records he had studied. The dragon lady was looking for something specific, something none of the candidates had shown yet. He wondered what it was, and he wondered if any of them would figure it out before the trial ended. The council chamber was different from the demonstration arena. It was smaller, quieter, and somehow felt heavier. Marcus sat in the observation section with other researchers and minor dignitaries. The candidates sat in a semicircle facing the dragon lady, who had taken a more human form today. She looked almost kind, which somehow made Marcus more nervous than when she looked terrifying. Today we test wisdom, the dragon lady said softly. I will present scenarios. You will tell me how you would respond as ruler of the galactic throne. There are no time limits. Think carefully. Marcus had his journal ready. This would be fascinating from an anthropological perspective. Each candidate would reveal their cultural values, their training, their fundamental assumptions about power and governance. The dragon lady's eyes glowed gently. First scenario. A plague has broken out on a mining colony. It is highly contagious but only fatal to unenhanced humans. Enhanced humans and other species are immune. The colony produces rare minerals essential for medical technology across the galaxy. Do you quarantine the colony, knowing the unenhanced workers will die but production continues? Or do you shut down production to evacuate and treat them, causing medical shortages that will kill millions elsewhere? Prince Vorash spoke first. His voice was confident. Evacuate the unenhanced workers. Replace them with enhanced or immune workers. Production continues with minimal interruption. The strong survive and adapt. Marcus wrote that down, then paused. He whispered to himself without meaning to. But the unenhanced workers are people. You cannot just replace people like equipment. Several observers nearby gave him annoyed looks for speaking during the trial. Marcus blushed and ducked his head, making himself smaller. Lady Celestine answered next. Calculate the optimal outcome. If quarantining saves more lives overall than evacuation, quarantine. If evacuation saves more, evacuate. Follow the mathematics. Marcus's pen scratched across paper. Cold, logical, but what about the families? What about the psychological impact on a society that watches people being left to die? That trauma would last generations, he was muttering again. Someone shushed him. Commander Zek's answer was precise. Create a buffer zone. Quarantine but airdrop supplies and medical aid to the contained area. Research the plague using the colony as a controlled environment. Find a cure that prevents future outbreaks. The temporary suffering of thousands prevents the permanent suffering of billions. Marcus bit his lip to keep from commenting out loud. Instead, he wrote furiously, uses people as test subjects without consent. Ethical violation, but he calls it practical necessity. One by one, each candidate answered. All of their solutions focused on efficiency, on numbers, on optimal outcomes. Some were brutal, some were elegant. All of them treated the unenhanced workers as variables in an equation, rather than individuals with lives and families. The Dragon Lady listened without expression. Next scenario. She presented a dozen more situations, each more complex than the last. A trade dispute between species that could escalate to war, a planet requesting independence from the Empire, a breakthrough technology that would benefit the rich but devastate traditional economies, resource shortages, territorial conflicts, first contact with a potentially hostile civilization. Prince Vorash consistently chose strength and dominance. If there was a problem, his answer was to be more powerful than the problem. Lady Celestine calculated probabilities and chose whatever option had the highest success percentage, regardless of who suffered. Commander Zek turned every scenario into a tactical situation with winners and losers, acceptable losses and strategic victories. The other candidates were variations on the same themes. Some were more diplomatic, some were more aggressive, but all of them approached leadership as a game to be won, a puzzle to be solved, a system to be optimized. Marcus kept writing his observations, forgetting to be quiet. Nobody is asking about culture. Nobody is considering the emotional impact. They are treating civilizations like machines. More shushing sounds from nearby. Marcus barely heard them. What about the agricultural worlds? He muttered during one answer. If you redirect resources like that, they will not be able to plant next season. Do you mind? An elegant alien in the next seat hissed at him. Sorry, Marcus whispered, but his pen kept moving. They are only thinking short-term. What happens in 10 years, 20? They are creating solutions that will cause problems for the next generation. The Dragon Lady presented a particularly difficult scenario. A species requests genetic modification technology that would enhance their entire population. However, their traditional culture is built around their current biological limitations. The enhancement would make them powerful, but destroy the cultural identity that has existed for 10,000 years. They are divided. Half want the enhancement, half want to preserve tradition. What do you do? This time the candidates debated among themselves. Vorash said to let the strong ones enhance and leave the weak behind. Celestine calculated that enhancement would produce better economic outcomes. Zek suggested a military intervention to prevent civil war. The Shadow Prince had a different answer. Enhance half. Keep half traditional. Separate them into different regions. Marcus's head shot up. That would create a genetic class system, he said out loud, forgetting himself completely. You would be building inequality into their society permanently. The entire chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Marcus realized what he had done. His face turned bright red. I am sorry, he stammered. I did not mean to interrupt. I was just taking notes. I apologized. The Dragon Lady's head turned slowly toward him. Her eyes, currently a soft gold color, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him want to disappear. What would you suggest? She asked. Marcus felt his heart stop. Me? I am just here to observe. I am not a candidate. Nevertheless, the Dragon Lady said, you object to the Shadow Prince's solution. What would you do? Marcus looked around desperately, hoping someone would rescue him. Nobody moved. 15 candidates stared at him. Hundreds of observers waited. The Dragon Lady's gaze did not waver. Marcus swallowed hard. I would not do anything. Confused murmurs filled the room. It is not my choice to make, Marcus continued, his voice shaking. It is their culture, their people, their future. I would provide information. I would show them examples of other species who went through similar decisions. I would make sure both sides understood the consequences. But I would not decide for them. That would be imperialism. We should not be imposing our ideas of what is best on other people. The room exploded with reactions. Some observers laughed at such a weak answer. Several candidates shook their heads in disbelief. How could an empire function if the emperor refused to make decisions? The Dragon Lady held up one hand. Silence fell instantly. "Continue the trial," she said quietly. The questions continued for 3 more hours. Each scenario became more impossible, more complex, more designed to force terrible choices. The candidates answered with confidence born from years of training. They had been prepared for exactly this kind of test. Marcus continued taking notes, occasionally muttering objections and observations that he thought were too quiet to be heard. He did not notice the Dragon Lady's eyes flickering toward him after each comment. Finally, when the last scenario had been answered, the Dragon Lady stood. Her form shifted, growing larger, more draconic. Scales rippled across her skin. Her wings spread wide, casting shadows across the entire chamber. "I have heard your wisdom," she said, and her voice made the air vibrate. "I have listened to your judgment. I have measured your fitness to rule." The candidates straightened, ready to hear who had performed best. The Dragon Lady's form darkened. The temperature dropped. When she spoke again, her voice was terrible with disappointment. "In 5,000 years of testing candidates, in 5,000 years of choosing rulers, I have never been so deeply disappointed." Shocked silence. "You are not wise," the Dragon Lady continued, her voice growing with each word. "You are educated. You are intelligent. You are clever. But you are not wise." Lady Celestine spoke up, her voice uncertain for the first time. "My lady, we answered every question. Our solutions were optimal. Optimal for what?" The Dragon Lady roared, and several observers flinched. "Optimal for maintaining power? Optimal for efficiency? You treat sentient beings like resources to be managed. You calculate suffering like it is an acceptable line item in a budget." She turned her terrible gaze across all 15 candidates. "Not one of you asked about the people affected by your decisions. Not one of you considered the cultural consequences that would ripple across generations. Not one of you showed any understanding that power is not about finding the best answer. It is about taking responsibility for whatever answer you choose." Prince Vorash stepped forward, his forearms spread. "My lady, we were trained to—" "You were trained to rule," the Dragon Lady interrupted. "But you learned only to command. You learned to optimize and calculate and dominate. You never learned to care." Commander Zek's machine eye flickered. "Emotion is weakness. A ruler must be objective. Objectivity without compassion is cruelty," the Dragon Lady said. "All of you have demonstrated exactly why none of you can sit on the galactic throne." The room erupted. Royal families shouted protests. Advisors demanded explanation. Chaos consumed the council chamber. Royal families shouted demands. Advisors argued with each other. The candidates stood in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. This was not supposed to be possible. The succession trial had never failed in 5,000 years. There had always been a ruler chosen. Always. Marcus tried to make himself even smaller in his seat. This was history happening, and he needed to document it. But his hands were shaking too much to write properly. The greatest political moment in a century, and he was too overwhelmed to do his job. "This is unacceptable," the representative from the Kryn Empire bellowed. He was even larger than Prince Vorash, with 6 arms instead of 4. "My son performed perfectly. He demonstrated ultimate strength." "Which is meaningless," the Dragon Lady cut him off. Her voice was not loud, but it carried absolute authority. The Kryn representative fell silent immediately. Lady Celestine's mother, the Queen of the Silver Court, spoke with icy precision. "Our daughter achieved mathematical perfection in every scenario. Her solutions were optimal by every measurable standard. You can measure everything except what matters," the Dragon Lady said. Commander Zek stepped forward. Unlike the others, he did not look angry. He looked curious, processing the failure like data. "My lady, help us understand. What were you looking for that we failed to provide?" The Dragon Lady's form shifted constantly, unable to settle on any particular shape. Dragon. Woman. Something between. She was clearly struggling with something, and Marcus realized with a shock that even an ancient artificial intelligence could feel frustration. "You want me to explain?" the Dragon Lady said slowly. "But if I must explain, then you have already proven you do not understand. A ruler who needs to be told to care about their people will never truly care about them." She turned away from the candidates, her massive form rotating slowly. Her eyes swept across the observation section, across the hundreds of dignitaries and researchers and minor officials who had come to witness history. Marcus was writing again, his pen moving across paper. She is looking for something none of them have. Not strength, not intelligence. Something more fundamental. Something about, he paused, thinking. Something about seeing people as people? The dragon lady's eyes stopped moving. They fixed on something in the observation section. They fixed on Marcus. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus looked up from his journal and met those terrible, ancient, burning gold eyes. He could not look away. He tried to make himself smaller, to be invisible, but it was too late. The dragon lady's claw rose slowly. It was massive, translucent, glowing with inner light. It pointed directly at Marcus Chen. Him, she said. The word fell into silence. Marcus looked behind him, certain she must be pointing at someone else. There was nobody there. His seat was at the end of a row. When he turned back, the dragon lady was still pointing at him. Me? His voice came out as a squeak. I am not. There has been a mistake. I am just a researcher. I am here to observe. I am not even. No mistake, the dragon lady said. She began moving toward him, her form shrinking slightly to navigate the chamber. Observers scrambled out of her way. Marcus Chen of Earth, you are my choice. The words did not make sense. They were sounds without meaning. Marcus stood up on shaking legs, clutching his journal to his chest like a shield. I am nobody. I have no royal blood. I am not enhanced. I am not military trained. I am just a guy who writes things down. Precisely, the dragon lady said. She was directly in front of him now. Her form had settled into something almost gentle, though her eyes still burned with that terrible intensity. Around them, the chamber had erupted into new chaos. This chaos was different. It was not angry. It was shocked, confused, borderline hysterical. A human? A baseline, unmodified human? The researcher? My lady, Prince Vorash's voice was carefully controlled. Surely you are not serious. He is, with all respect, he is nothing. Look at this, the dragon lady said and gestured. Holographic screens appeared throughout the chamber. Marcus recognized them with growing horror. They were recordings from the past 3 weeks. The first showed Marcus during the power demonstrations sitting in the gallery. His voice came through clearly. But what about the energy grid workers who maintain this? Are they protected from feedback? Nobody mentioned safety protocols for the support staff. The second showed him in the academy library, talking to himself while researching. These expansion plans look impressive, but they are moving through inhabited systems. What happens to the people already living there? Why is nobody talking about them? More recordings played. Marcus during meals muttering about food distribution. Marcus in the gardens commenting on resource allocation. Marcus in his quarters late at night, writing in his journal about governance theories that accounted for the needs of ordinary citizens. For 3 weeks, the dragon lady said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You have been taking my test without knowing it. While others prepared for demonstrations of power, you asked questions about consequences. While they calculated optimal outcomes, you worried about the people those outcomes would affect. Marcus felt like he might be sick. I was just taking notes. I was observing. That is my job. Exactly, the dragon lady said again. You were doing your job. And your job is to pay attention to things that powerful people ignore. She turned to address the entire assembly. Every candidate here was trained to rule. They learned strategy, tactics, economics, military science. They can calculate the movement of fleets and the flow of resources across galaxies. But not one of them asked the simplest question. Her voice grew louder. What do the people actually want? What do they need? What will this cost them? Not in credits or resources, but in their daily lives, their cultures, their futures. Another hologram appeared. It showed Marcus's objection during the genetic modification scenario. That would create a genetic class system. You would be building inequality into their society permanently. You were the only one in this room, the dragon lady said, who recognized that some problems cannot be solved by rulers, that some decisions belong to the people themselves. You were the only one who understood that the greatest power is sometimes the power to step back and let others choose their own path. Marcus shook his head desperately. That does not make me qualified to rule. That makes me hesitant, uncertain. How can you want someone who questions everything? How can I not? The dragon lady responded. Every tyrant in history was certain of their righteousness. Every disaster began with someone who never doubted they were right. She reached out one clawed hand. Marcus flinched, but she simply touched his journal, making it glow for a moment. You wrote something today. during the wisdom tests. May I share it? Marcus could not speak. He nodded, terrified. The dragon lady's voice was gentle as she read. Power without purpose is just destruction in slow motion. And later, they are only thinking short term. They are creating solutions that will cause problems for the next generation. And finally, it is their culture, their people, their future. We should not be imposing our ideas of what is best on other people. She looked at the candidates, at the royal families, at the assembled dignitaries. This is wisdom. Not power. Not intelligence. Not optimization. Wisdom is understanding that you do not have all the answers. Wisdom is caring more about getting it right than about being right. Lady Celestine spoke, her perfect voice tinged with something that might have been pain. My lady, he is weak. He has no enhancements, no training. How can he possibly manage the complexities of galactic governance? He will have advisors, the dragon lady said simply. He will have all of you, in fact. She gestured at the candidates. Prince Vorash will teach him strength and honor. Lady Celestine will teach him efficiency and planning. Commander Zek will teach him strategy. Each of you has incredible gifts, but you need someone who will use those gifts for the right reasons. Marcus found his voice finally. I do not want this. I never wanted any kind of power. I just want to study, to learn, to understand things. I know, the dragon lady said, and for the first time she smiled. It was a terrifying smile, but somehow also kind. That is exactly why you are the only one who should have it. She straightened, her form growing again, becoming terrible and magnificent. Her voice boomed through the chamber. 5,000 years ago, the First Empire tasked me with choosing rulers. They gave me one criterion above all others. Choose someone who seeks not to rule, but to serve. Choose someone who sees power as a burden, not a prize. Choose someone who would give it all away if they could. Her eyes fixed on Marcus again. The galactic throne does not belong to the strong or the perfect or the clever. It belongs to those who understand that it should not belong to anyone at all. But someone must carry the weight regardless. Marcus Chen, you are that someone. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Marcus stood there, his journal clutched to his chest, his mind racing. This was impossible. This was insane. This could not be happening. But the dragon lady's eyes held his, and in them he saw something he had not expected. She was not mocking him. She was not playing games. She genuinely believed he was the right choice. And that somehow. Marcus spent 3 days locked in his quarters, refusing to come out. He had disabled the door chime after the first 100 visitors tried to speak with him. His journal lay open on the desk, filled with pages and pages of arguments for why this was the worst decision ever made in galactic history. I am not qualified, he had written at the top of the first page. Below that, he had listed every reason he could think of. No military experience, no political training, no genetic enhancements, no cybernetic upgrades, no royal bloodline, no diplomatic education. The list went on for 3 pages. On the 4th day, the dragon lady appeared in his room without warning. Marcus yelped and fell out of his chair. You cannot just teleport into someone's quarters, he protested, picking himself up off the floor. I can do anything I want, the dragon lady said calmly. She had taken her most human form, looking like a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, except for the scales that occasionally flickered across her skin. I have been waiting patiently for you to come to terms with reality. But patience has limits. I am not doing this, Marcus said firmly. You made a mistake. Pick someone else. Anyone else? The dragon lady sat down in Marcus's chair, which should have been too small for her but somehow was not. I have been choosing rulers for 5,000 years. I have never made a mistake. There is a first time for everything. Marcus, the dragon lady said, and her voice was gentler than he had ever heard it. Why are you really refusing? Marcus sat on his bed, his shoulders slumped. Because I will fail. Because billions of people will suffer because of my incompetence. Because I am just a researcher who likes books and history, and you want me to make decisions that will affect the entire galaxy. Yes, the dragon lady said simply. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. You are afraid of failure because you care about the consequences. Every ruler before you was afraid of looking weak. There is a difference, she leaned forward. Let me ask you something. What would you do right now if you were emperor? Marcus laughed bitterly. I would abdicate immediately. After that? He thought for a moment, then sighed. I would probably try to figure out what people actually need. Not what I think they need. What they actually need. I would ask them, Go on. I would look at the systems that are not working. The trade routes where pirates operate freely, because nobody patrols them. The colonies that are producing resources but barely have enough to survive themselves. The species who have been petitioning for representation for decades and keep getting ignored. Marcus stood up and started pacing, getting animated despite himself. I would want to know why the frontier worlds get so little support. Why the enhanced citizens have access to medical technology that baseline humans cannot afford. Why some species in the Empire have full rights and others do not. I would want to understand the actual problems before I tried to fix anything. He stopped, realizing what he had just said. The dragon lady was smiling at him. I walked into that, Marcus said quietly. You did, she agreed. You just described the first 6 months of your reign. Learning, listening, understanding. You are already thinking like the ruler this galaxy needs. Over the following weeks, something changed in Marcus. It was not that he suddenly wanted to be emperor. He still thought the entire thing was absurd. But he started asking different questions instead of why me. He started asking, if it has to be me, what do I need to learn? The dragon lady assigned him advisors. To Marcus's surprise, several of the failed candidates volunteered for the positions. Prince Vorash came first. The massive warrior stood in the doorway of Marcus's quarters, all 4 arms folded. The dragon lady says I am to teach you strength and honor. Marcus looked up at him, pushing his glasses back up his nose. I appreciate that, but I am never going to be strong like you. I am human, baseline human. I will never have 4 arms or be able to break steel. Strength is not always physical, Vorash said gruffly. He sat down and the chair creaked under his weight. When the dragon lady revealed her choice, I was angry. I felt cheated. But I have been thinking about your words during the wisdom test. My words? You said that people should not be replaced like equipment. You said we should not impose our ideas on other cultures. Vorash looked uncomfortable. In my culture, the weak are discarded. It is the way things have always been. But you made me think, what if the way things have always been is wrong? Marcus blinked. That is very wise. I do not feel wise. I feel confused, Vorash admitted. But perhaps that is the beginning of wisdom. I will teach you about my people, our ways, our strengths, and maybe you will teach me to see things differently. Lady Celestine came next. Her silver hair still floated around her head, and she was still the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen, but her perfect face showed something new. Uncertainty. I do not understand why I failed, she said without preamble. I calculated every answer to optimize outcomes. My solutions would have saved the most lives, produced the most prosperity, created the most stability. Marcus gestured for her to sit. Can I ask you something? In that plague scenario, the one about the unenhanced workers, what was the mortality rate you calculated? 68% of the unenhanced population would die before a cure could be developed. Did you calculate the psychological impact on the survivors? Did you factor in how it would feel to be part of the species that the Empire chose not to save? Celestine was silent for a long moment. No, she finally said. I did not. Because I cannot calculate feelings. I was designed for logic, not emotion. Maybe that is what you can teach me then, Marcus said. How to think clearly and plan efficiently. And maybe I can help you understand the things that cannot be calculated. That seems fair, Celestine said carefully. Then, even more carefully, may I ask you something? Are you truly not enhanced at all? No genetic modifications? No cybernetics? Nothing, Marcus confirmed. I am as baseline human as they come.
I even need glasses because I never got corrective eye surgery.
I liked how they looked. Celestine stared at him like he was an alien species.
Which, Marcus supposed, from her perspective, he might as well be. That is fascinating, she said finally. Inefficient, but fascinating. Commander Zek was the last to volunteer. The cyborg sat across from Marcus, his red eye glowing in the dim light of the quarters. I have been analyzing the trial data. I wanted to understand where my calculations went wrong. And I did not account for the human variable. I treated every scenario as a strategic problem with an optimal solution. I assumed that if I could achieve victory with minimal losses, that was the correct answer. But, Marcus prompted, but you reminded me that the losses are people, and people are not calculations. Zek's human eye focused on Marcus. I had forgotten that. When I got these enhancements, when I became more machine than man, I thought I was becoming better, more efficient, more capable. I did not realize I was losing something important. You did not lose it, Marcus said. You just forgot it for a while. Machines can be part of being human. The problem is when we start thinking of humans as machines. Zek nodded slowly. The Dragon Lady told me you would say something like that. Over the following months, Marcus's education continued. He learned about military strategy from Zek, diplomatic protocols from various ambassadors, economic systems from the trade guilds. Each day brought new information, new complexities, new reasons to feel overwhelmed. But Marcus also did something none of his advisors expected. He started talking to ordinary people. He would walk through the academy grounds and chat with maintenance workers. He visited the kitchens and asked the cooks about food distribution. He spent hours in the lower levels of Nova Prime, in the districts where normal citizens lived, just listening to their concerns. His advisors found this behavior bizarre. You should be studying more important matters, Lady Celestine told him. This is the most important matter, Marcus replied. How can I make decisions about people's lives if I do not understand how they actually live? The coronation date approached. The ceremony would be the largest event in a century. Every species, every nation, every significant power in the galaxy would send representatives. Marcus was terrified. The night before the coronation, he sat in his quarters with his journal. He had written one final list, not reasons to refuse anymore. This list was different. Things I need to remember, he had written at the top. Below that, listen more than I speak. Ask questions instead of assuming answers. Remember that statistics represent actual people. Just because something has always been done does not mean it should continue. Power is not about being right. It is about taking responsibility. Some problems do not have solutions, only choices. The moment I stop questioning myself is the moment I become dangerous. I will make mistakes. And that is okay as long as I learn from them. The Dragon Lady appeared one last time. Are you ready? Marcus closed his journal. No, I'm never going to be ready. This is too big, too important, too overwhelming. Good, she said. The moment you feel ready is the moment you have forgotten what you are really doing. And what am I really doing? Thank you for watching and comment for next part.